Alright, so it looks like we're starting since we already got into the Enoch stuff. So there were a couple things I wanted to address posted in the other video. Some people had posted about this. One of them was that he hangs the earth on nothing. I said it was from the Quran. It was from the Bible. I kept looking for it. I don't know why I had remembered like like a Muslim apologist or something. You know, obviously memory, you know, is plastic. It's not static. So that, you know, every time you recall something, you are altering the memory, which is unfortunate. That must have been what happened. So it's yeah, I just wanted to issue that correction. I looked for it, I just couldn't find it. There's a lot of discussion about how Allah has stretched the earth out and that sort of thing, but it's not hangs on nothing. That was from the Bible, so I did want to correct that. And there was another one. Let me go ahead and just check my comments, because I know it was in there. What's this video? Comments, blah, blah, blah. I'm just looking for regular comments, the Gunyang comments. Alright. I remember reading this book. Somebody posted about something else about Enoch. Boy, this really isn't show. You know, I'm looking at the YouTube studio, and it's just not very helpful, unfortunately. Let's double check. It was in part 3. I know that. So we'll go to YouTube again. I had it. I was ready to talk about it, and I think just all this chit chat got me off thinking something else. All right. Regarding what you said on the 1 hour mark about female angels being demons, was that all the Abrahamic religions? What is your primary source for that? Is it Enoch? So that one actually was the winged woman in Zechariah. I'm not 100% sure if this translates to Islam, but this would be like the Jewish and Christian kind of belief. The chapter is pretty short, and there's this male angel that's talking to Zechariah, and there's a basket full of iniquity, and the evils that are in this basket are represented by a woman. So evil, like personified in this, is a woman. The basket is taken away by 2 women that have the wings of storks, and storks are considered an unclean animal. So in some readings of this, or in some interpretations, or in some translations, people will consider them to be demonic, or just not angels. So as far as we can say, they're at least just not angels. Some people go as far as to say they are demonic, especially with the idea that they're removing this basket of evil to take it back to a place of evil, or this origin of evil. So that's kind of where that went. Let's see. Pinkies are also an official title for the baby rats. All right. Angels in their natural form in Islam have no gender, often reference both male and female gender. When they take on human form, they're always adult men. Yes. I don't know about both female and male gender that I've read in like the Bible, but they do appear to be genderless when they are angels, and then definitely adult men that are very beautiful, specifically when they are taking on human form, which would be why the Watchers were able to reproduce. Isn't that exciting? All right, let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to start at chapter 26. So if we remember these chapters here, just as a quick review, with these chapters starting here at, oh my goodness, 17, this is when Enoch starts to see everything that is not just hell, but also the waiting room. So I don't know how many of you were here last time or saw the video, but we also get to see the waiting room. It's not called the waiting room. That's a nickname that we're just using for it, just because that's is what it appears to be. So basically, when you are in the Abrahamic religious mindset, theology, however you want to call it, when you die, you do not immediately go to heaven or hell or purgatory if you're Catholic. You are in a place where you wait, and then you are judged. So Judgment Day happens for everybody at the same time. When that happens, you are then assigned heaven or hell or purgatory. That means, where does your soul hang out before that judgment? So this is the waiting room. We actually saw like 3 waiting rooms. One of them were for righteous people, period. The other one were for people that did something wrong and were punished for it in their lifetime, such as, let's say, a serial killer, but the serial killer was caught, put into prison, or executed. That's a separate waiting room. And then there's a third waiting room for people who were unrighteous but did not get any punishment while they were alive. So using the serial killer example, a serial killer who got away with it, lived a normal life, and then died. In that waiting room, you're tortured. So that's kind of interesting. Is hell here a reference to Hades or Sheol, or is it the lake of fire? So we're still learning more about this this area, but it is I wouldn't say a lake of fire. It's literally under and around the earth, and it goes down as far as Enoch can see. The pillars of the earth, the pillars on which the earth is standing, they are fire. And that fire extends downward as far as can be seen. This is considered Sheol because it is still, this was written within the Jewish context, because this was written before the alleged birth and life and stuff of Jesus. But the way it's described, it's very interesting, I think. There is still a lot of fire. It's the bosom of Abraham mentioned in the New Testament. I suppose you could kind of consider it that way. But as far as I understood, the bosom of Abraham and the suffering of the rich man, that was supposed to be like an allegory. Like, this is what will happen to you. Not that this is where they are right this second. But then, there is room for interpretation. Was that being literal? Is Abraham literally in heaven right now, or is he in this waiting room? When we did check out chapter 20, was it 26? It was 26 or 25. It was pretty close to the end. Enoch saw Abel. Abel, we could argue, was like the first righteous person, right? He's being really good to God, and he's serving God and all this stuff. His brother cuts his life short, and then he's stuck in the waiting room still. Like, the first guy to get killed is still stuck in this waiting room. So what hope would there be for Abraham? We could also wonder too about like Ezekiel, since Ezekiel was taken up into heaven. He didn't die. So is that also allegedly what's going on with Enoch, that sort of thing too. The bosom of Moses sounds like an excuse for Jesus, the Christ of Nazareth's martyrdom retroactive before his time. I don't understand. I don't understand what you're referring to. I mean, I understand bosom of Moses. Like, I understand all the words, but I don't understand your question. I'm not sure what you mean. I really don't understand. Is there another way that you can write that? I know you do have a limit. In your characters is like a 200 character limit, so you don't have to write Jesus the Christ of Nazareth. You can just write Jesus to make it shorter. That might help too. All right. So we're going to get into this. Then I said, for what object is this blessed land? Let's actually go back real quick, just so we know exactly where we are. Oops, that is too far back, or too far forward. So remember, he is in the middle of the earth, and we also see like a lot of, we're seeing here like trees, we're seeing that mountain that was supposed to be this place, like this throne for Yahweh, when Yahweh physically comes down to earth after Judgment Day. Did we not read this one? I feel like we Must have stopped early. Do we stop here? Oh, that's right. Because we're starting 26, not 25. Or 27. Sorry. There we are. So remember, this was the fruit. And we had talked about it's not just a fruit. Remember, this is something that it's for people that are living in a time where there's not a lot of like excess sweet calories. You know, something like a fruit is a nice treat. And then to have the best, most fragrant fruit as your most basic food, that sort of gives you this idea about how wonderful your afterlife is supposed to be. So now we're going into chapter 26. So we are on the right chapter at least. Let's see. Sheol, or the lake of fire, hell, is made up because of volcanoes or lava. There may have been an idea of that. I know Shibolba is related to some of the volcanic activity in like Mesoamerica. But as far as we can see, this is like ethereal or supernatural fire. This is not going into a mountain. This is under the earth, pillars of moving, undulating, almost lively fire. This is a place, remember, where the stars themselves are being roasted over fire as a punishment, which is interesting. I went back to the beginning of the book, so back in like chapter 1 and chapter 2, and it was interesting because Enoch starts off by the first, 4 chapters, about how God makes everything happen. Even the stars move because God said so. But then we're in this book, or this chapter later in the book, that tells us these stars are being punished for not listening to God. So it is sort of interesting because we get this start that God doesn't make mistakes, and then some chapters in the book, these are disobedient stars, like God didn't have control over them. So it's kind of an interesting concept. Okay, again, you don't have to write. So Hiram. Again, you could just write Jesus. We're not needing to write Yeshua, Ha-Notzri, Jehovah, or Yehovah, or Yehonahan, son of Hagkol. That wasn't the question, so I told you can just shorten that to Jesus, and that it's a better idea to do that because you don't have a lot of characters. The concept of John 3:16, that he died for our sins, and as long as you believe in him forever, anyone who comes into existence after him. So this is not the bosom of Moses. That's not, and it's the bosom of Abraham that we're talking about, not the bosom of Moses. And then John 3:16 is not about the bosom of Moses. So that's why it's always good to make your stuff really short, because you might end up confusing it a bit. And so Hiram has been on my channel a lot, so I know that Hiram's thoughts can get a little bit jumbled a bit, so that's why I'm just encouraging Hiram to just use as short of words as possible. But I don't. Oh, you're asking, so what about the people before him? These were people that were righteous with God. And so before Yeshua would be those who were, that found approval or righteousness in Yahweh. Right? So that's how that was always described to me in church anyway. That, of course, people like Abraham would be in heaven even though they didn't believe in Jesus, because they never had the option to believe in Jesus. And it's also one of the arguments against mission work, because the idea is that if you never heard the word of Jesus, you automatically go to heaven. You just automatically. As long as you're like a good person, that kind of thing, you automatically go to heaven because you didn't reject Jesus, you never got the option to accept him. And so I just remember wondering, well, then why do we have missionaries? Aren't we condemning people? As if we go to them, excuse me, if we go to them and try to share our religion, which is going to sound as outlandish as if they had come to us to share their religion, they're mostly going to reject this religion. So didn't we just doom them to hell when we didn't have to? So it's this sort of idea, though. But the idea within the Christian mindset, anyway, is that if you were before Jesus or after Jesus and you didn't get a chance to encounter him, as long as you were a basically righteous person or basically kind person, you would be allowed into heaven. But for people like Abraham, Moses, and those people that were directly communicating with Yahweh and then found favor with Yahweh, they would also be in heaven as well. Because remember, the idea is that Jesus is not another God. Oh my goodness, sorry. I have no idea. All right, is that a little better? The idea here is not that Jesus is another God. It's that Jesus is like another chapter in the saga of God. So as long as you were part of that righteousness beforehand, that's the idea. Automatically going to heaven for not knowing about Jesus is that the doctrine of invincible ignorance. If it is, that's not how it was described in our church. It was just this idea that it was the idea that God, not that you were okay, but that God is so perfect in his judgment that rationally, how could he judge you for rejecting Jesus if you never got the opportunity to know Jesus? And then there was this other idea that everyone knows God, and that God reveals himself, and so everyone is without excuse, and that perhaps God revealed himself to those people and they interpreted God as whatever they have as their native religion. And so their native religion actually is a type of Christianity, but it's just with their different words and slightly different concepts. So that was the other idea, that they would have had God revealed to them in some way, and that's probably what their religion is based on. Yeah, I know it doesn't make a whole lot of sense saying that, but when you're in the religion, it seems like it makes sense. Yeah. Let's see. Did anyone die for my sin before Jesus did? No. The closest that you would get is animals. So not a person that dies, but animals that die. You would have, especially we talked about the scapegoat, you would have these animals that were sacrificed to rid the sins, or to rid you and your fellow people in the town of your sins. So that was this idea. That's why Jesus is sometimes called the sacrificial lamb, or the Lamb of God. It's this idea that all of the sacrifices in the past, Jesus is here to be the final sacrifice. But again, it has to do, is it moral? If you want to talk about it from, an outside kind of perspective, is it moral to have somebody or some animal be sacrificed, and that absolves you from your wrongdoings, right? If you hurt somebody or you wrong someone, you get forgiveness from that person, not from a private conversation with Jesus. Do you know what I mean? Even if Jesus is real, even if he's real, a private conversation with Jesus is not where you want to find true forgiveness for that wrongdoing you did to another person. And that's why it bothers me to hear that phrase some people use, only God may judge me, or I don't care, God is happy with me. It's such a really selfish way to think. Time for Lee to go get the eucalyptus out. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I think it's just the air is just so dry today. It's dry and it's cold, so. In a way, didn't everyone die in the flood for our sins, or was that just an excuse to waterboard the planet? So to be fair, waterboarding is to simulate drowning. It is not to actually cause drowning. Everyone died in the flood for their own sins. That's a different thing. It wasn't this type of substitution. What's it called? Substitutional atonement, I think it is, where somebody dies on behalf of your sins. So, can you imagine that? Can you imagine if you were sentenced to life in prison or sentenced to death, and then somebody said, "Oh, I'll take it. I'll take the punishment for that person." How is that justice, right? It's not justice. But in the case of the flood, they died for their own sin. So they were engaging with the Watchers, either intellectually or sexually or both. And that's why they were punished. So it was a punishment for themselves. Yeah, they didn't die and have sins of other people absolved. They were punished for those sins. As a side note, I think that framed picture on the wall behind Lee is of Krampus. No, they're just kind of like general images. Maybe I should paint something. I've been painting stuff and doing some stuff lately in terms of arts, and I've been trying to draw more things and all that good stuff. Let's see. There's 2 covenants. First, the law that no one could fulfill them, and then the new covenant and grace. Okay, I'm not sure what that has to do with it, or what we were talking about. But yeah, there's this belief. There's a belief that for some Christians that that we are under the new covenant, the one of Jesus. But remember, Jesus said he didn't come to abolish the law; he came to uphold and fulfill the law. So both covenants would be simultaneous. He's not here to replace anything, but just to add to it. I worship animals without being a vegetarian, of course. Well, then you're not really worshiping them if you're eating them. Can you imagine, like, eating your god? Not a good time. Leave it to Lee to take a semi-trolly comment and actually teach something. What was trolly? Oh, yeah, your comment, yes. Okay. I thought it was some other comment. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm glad you're learning. Like suddenly all these weird questions that I've received in class have like flooded back. There have been some students that were trying to be edgy, and they would ask these questions that are very out of nowhere, and they expected me to like really be shocked or give them detention, and I was just like, oh well, are you just asking this to be edgy? Do you really want an answer? And they're just like, I guess an answer, okay. And I'll just answer the question. They forget it's very hard to shock your teacher when your teacher was in the Marines. You know, there's nothing they can say that's going to shock me. All right. So I went from thence. From thence is going to be that beautiful mountain area with all the best trees and like the most delicious fruit of the trees, and then that mountain throne. That's for Yahweh. So that's where he's leaving from. So now he's going to the middle of the earth. We're going to see if this is the center of the earth, or if as a circle he's talking about the middle. Like the target, the bullseye middle. And I saw a blessed place in which there were trees with branches abiding and blooming of a dismembered tree. And there I saw a holy mountain, and underneath the mountain to the east there was a stream, and it flowed towards the south. And I saw towards the east another mountain higher than this, and between them a deep and narrow ravine. For those of you that don't know that word, it's a type of like a river. It also ran a stream underneath the mountain. So let's look at these. I have a hard time visualizing these sometimes. I gotta reread them, because Enoch is talking about seeing something and also seeing beneath it. He's talking about seeing a mountain and seeing beneath a mountain. Are these mountains floating? Is he just able to have this kind of radio type vision where he can see as if he's projecting some kind of ground penetrating visual rays of some sort? So it is a bit odd. So we're with a bunch of trees, and then there's a holy mountain, and under the mountain there's a stream, and that stream is flowing towards the south, and there's another mountain that's higher, and there's a ravine, so another stream, and then another stream underneath that mountain. So we're looking at a mountain with a stream under it, and another mountain with a stream under it, and between these two there's another type of river that kind of flows through there. To the west of that mountain was another mountain, lower than the former and of small elevation, and the ravine between them. I'm getting one of those impressions that it's like when you need to make the word count in your essay. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, great, we just wrote, you know, we can read this, but so what? You know, is this a marvelous description like some of his other descriptions? Not really. It's like there's a bunch of mountains, there's rivers between them, and there's rivers under them. All the ravines were deep and narrow, being formed of hard rock, and the trees were not planted upon them. And I marveled at the rocks, and I marveled at the ravine. Yea, I marveled very much. I mean, it's compared to some of the stuff we read before, this is not like amazing. You know? But let's try to think about it from his point of view. He's now looking at these really gorgeous mountains, these really amazing ravines that have worn their way through the rock, and he's marveling at just how beautiful this nature is. So that's as far as I can get, unfortunately, with that chapter in terms of trying to visualize it. 3 mountains, a bunch of rivers, got it, yeah. Is there an artist's interpretation of these passages? I can't visualize what I'm supposed to see. Can we artist interpret this? All right, let's see. We got a mountain. We got another mountain. Okay. Under these mountains, there's a river. Between the mountains, there's a river. And then there's another mountain here. Okay. There's a river under that, and between those 2 mountains, there's a river. So we're just watching almost like, I don't know, when I read this, I get almost the impression of it's like fingers of water coming out, and then there's like a mountain here, and then a mountain between, a mountain here, and then this river between. So it's not, what I wonder though is how he can see under the mountain. Are the mountains floating and there's rivers under it, or is this a spring and the river comes out from the bottom of the mountain? Is he able to just understand there's an underground river? It's not really described. And again, this would be assuming the earth is a circle, this would be the midpoint, this middle point of it, not as a sphere and then the interior of the earth in the middle of the earth. Because that wouldn't really make sense to be in the middle of the earth and then have all these mountains, right? Let's see. 3 mountains, a bunch of rivers, got it. The information he is giving seems to be an explanation of how different where he came from is to where he went thereafter. It could be these rivers, we might find out, could spread out into the rest of the earth, although I'm not 100% sure. We talked about, Enoch talked about going to where the origin of rivers and the origin of these fires and stuff, where they were originating, and it appeared like he was also talking about the edge of the earth as opposed to the middle of the earth. So it might be something like that as well. This could be where some of these are, but now we're going to learn a bit more about it, so we don't have to totally interpret this by ourselves, but I like to try to do that just to see how well we can match what is explained to us later. And then I said, for what object is this blessed land, which is entirely filled with trees, and this accursed valley between? Then Uriel, one of the holy angels who was with me, answered and said, this accursed valley is for those who are accursed forever. Here shall all the accursed be gathered together, who utter with their lips against the Lord unseemly words, and of his glory speak hard things. What's interesting is that this is a place of rivers, isn't it? Rivers and mountains. There are places where there's not trees, and then we had some trees. I would not consider a place accursed with water. I get very, not even necessarily from a hell perspective where, oh, it should be rivers of fire or something, but just if there's water and there's land, you have hope, right? You have hope that you could plant something. You have hope that at least you can drink water, even if you're not able to eat, you could at least fill up on water. So it is interesting. And so I think Shugul, I think that's what you probably were talking about then, that he's talking about this being very different from that place of many, many, many trees. So that's the blessed place, and now this is the accursed place. So I think that's what you're probably talking about. Because when I saw where he came from, I thought, for some reason, I was thinking earlier in his journey. But I think that you probably meant it this way. Let me know. Ratza says, under how is an underground river or the more foreground where he looks at the mountains? Right. And I'm not getting any additional information here. The fact that there's rivers at all is a bit odd to consider this an accursed place. Perhaps these rivers are poisoned. So we can check them. And also because Enoch says he marveled at these. He marveled at the ravines and the depth. He marveled at the rocks and stuff that he saw there. He marveled at them. Whereas before, he trembled, he was fearful, even in the sight of Yahweh, he was scared. And yet here he's like, oh, this is pretty cool. I don't, maybe there was a different meaning of marvels here. You were correct, C. This is why you get the big bucks. Yeah, I know. Me and my unmonetized videos. If you guys want to join my Patreon, you totally can. Is this the accursed valley, some form of hell where the sinners who go against God go? So this hasn't been too described. We could be talking about this is where they go, or we could be talking about levels of hell or different places of hell. So there's, just like we had the waiting room, there was that one room where you actually got punished based on what happened in your life. Another idea is, I think it's the Gospel of Peter that talks about a bunch of different, not like any biblical text, but like in another apocryphal text. He talks about the different types of punishment in hell based on your different type of sin. And then there's like Dante's Inferno. There's like the level, like the layers of hell based on like what type of sin. So this could be it, where this is the valley of the people who speak against the Lord. So these are like blasphemers. But I would burn, if it was me, and I was making this stuff, I would make these like rivers of acid. So that way these blasphemers with their terrible lips, they would be burned, and their mouth would be burned anytime they tried to, I don't know. I wouldn't punish them with a ravine. Like, I feel like water is so intrinsically tied to life, to hope, to success. Success of civilizations and success of farming and fishing and travel. The idea that there's this land of abundant water, and that's a place of curse. But we should definitely read more. Let's see. Hey, Dante, Enoch called. He wants his ideas of hell back. Yeah. Maybe it rained down through the caverns, measureless to man, down to a sunless sea. It could. I don't know if the middle of the earth is Eastern Europe, but it definitely could. But it doesn't explain that. That's the problem. There is no hell description that can match the cruelty and intimidation of the Quranic hell. Yeah, isn't one of the layers or the types, there is a black fire, a fire so hot it burns black, if I can recall correctly. Dante's Inferno, I played that video game. I didn't even know that was a video game. Did the Angry Video Game Nerd do that one, by the way? Alright. So here they shall be gathered together, and here shall be their place of judgment. In the last days there shall be upon them a spectacle of righteous judgment in the presence of the righteous forever. Here shall the merciful bless the Lord of glory, eternal King. Here shall they be gathered together in their habitation. Last time's true judgment. The godly instead of the righteous, or the merciful, bless the Lord of glory, eternal kin. And in the days of judgment over the former, they shall bless him for the mercy in accordance with which he has assigned them. Then I blessed the Lord of glory and set forth his glory and lauded him gloriously. Glory, 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 right? this doesn't explain whether this is a waiting room for those people, or if this is their place after judgment, or if this is their place to be judged. So we may find out in the next chapter. You guys can definitely guess as you so desire. And thence I went towards the east, right? So we're not talking about, just to go back, we're not talking about port, right? Port and starboard. So I went towards the east, into the midst of the mountain range of the desert. And I saw the wilderness, and it was solitary, full of trees and plants, and water gushed forth from above, rushing like a copious watercourse, which flowed towards the northwest. It caused clouds to dew and to ascend on every side. So this, I think any of my geography students will say, teacher, this sounds kind of like a rain shadow effect. That's sort of what I'm getting here. But, you know, what is this place? So we're continuing to go into the east, and now we're in this area that's, what do you guys think? Is this a good place or a bad place that he found? Because I would have guessed the other thing is not like a punishment place. I don't know if it was necessarily awesome, but what do you guys think? Is there a connection between this and the doctrine of dispensationalism? You know, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. While you guys are checking, we can check a bit with that. Are you talking perhaps about God and... Oh, you mean the judgment time periods? Is that what you're talking about? Or are we talking about Enoch living in one of these time periods? Obsessed with glory, yeah. I mean, if you read the other chapters, I don't know if you were here with us, Muhammad, or if you saw the other videos, Yahweh is all about that glory. Like, he's deleting everything on the earth so he can get it back to how it was where people were praising him. Sounds like a rainforest, but none of them flow northwest, at least as far as I know. I mean, the Nile, kinda. The rivers, I mean, the forests don't flow. Yeah, that's what I figured. You know, rivers flow north, you know. They just don't flow uphill. We talked about that in the maps thing. Rivers definitely can flow north, they just don't flow uphill. So there's a difference there. I'm trying to think if this might have anything to do with like the occult or pagan concepts of the east, the west, the north, the south, that there's gods or types of wind that are in control of it. So I'm not sure if that's where we're ever going to get with this. So do we think this area is a good place or a bad place? So far that has not been posted. That's okay. And then I went to another place in the desert and approached the east of this mountain range, and there I saw aromatic trees exhaling the fragrance of frankincense and myrrh. What a beautiful, like, way to describe it. And there were trees similar to the almond tree. I don't know. I was going to make a joke about almond milk, but I can't think of one. That's such a beautiful way to say that, though. Aromatic trees exhaling the fragrance of frankincense and myrrh. When we talk about, in one of like the history classes, we end up talking about frankincense and how that was a common trade item back in the day. And so I have like some frankincense and I have some myrrh. I have frankincense tears, and then I have frankincense like essential oil and myrrh essential oil, and then I have the students just smell them and just like, you know, this is I don't know, I think it helps kind of connect to it. So if you guys haven't smelled frankincense and myrrh, it's really hard to describe without using other scents that you may not have smelled. It's really a deep, sort of a woodsy kind of scent, which, you know, makes sense because it's related to trees, but it's like wood and almost a masculine musky cologne kind of put together. It's a really, really nice scent for sure. Korean Buddhists talk about 49 days in the waiting room and several hells. Yeah, what's the Buddhist level of hells? It's 7 levels of hells. Depending on the sins people can commit, flood can be a punishment. What is it a punishment for? What kind of sin do you commit for floods? Sure, the Nile-ish, but as far as I know, there's no rainforest with rivers exiting to the northwest. But you're the geography teacher, you know better. I mean, there's rainforests in Africa, you know. But the only difference would be, like, the rainforest would have to be on a mountain, which is not as common. Rainforests are usually like sea level-ish, usually. And the rivers start in the mountains, so. I mean, the Amazon goes north a little bit in the rain. I don't know, just trying to think about it. Rainforests are cool. No, they're pretty hot, actually. Okay, Ratsa, how do I delete a person out of existence? Can I do that from this? Alright, so we're looking at some beautiful smelling trees. Can you imagine just finding these in the desert? And I'd like to know how Enoch is going. Is he walking? Is he flying? Is he riding something? Is he holding the hand of Uriel? Because we had Uriel, and I think we had another archangel before, but we at least have Uriel, right? Is Uriel flying him around? Is he teleporting him? So I would really like to see that. And beyond these, I went afar to the east, and I saw another place, a valley full of water, and therein there was a tree, the color of fragrant trees, such as the mastic. And on the sides of those valleys, I saw fragrant cinnamon. Cinnamon, again, is also one of the trees. And beyond these, I proceeded to the east. So we can look at here, if you guys just want to look at fragrant tree cinnamon. Just if you wanted to see how it looked. I think a lot of people have seen cinnamon as the powder, and then I think enough people have seen it as this curled thing. But for some reason, there's a disconnect between the concept, even though we literally see it. It's wood, like it's off of a tree, and there's different types of cinnamon as well. There's like cassia, and there's some other types of cinnamon trees. But yeah. Oh wow, threatened by the teacher. Yep, gotta report me. The movie Along with the Gods may give you some ideas about hells. Can I watch it on Netflix? That's my question. All right. So he's walking around, smelling nice stuff. And I saw other mountains, and among them were groves of trees, and there flowed forth from them nectar, which is named Sarara and Galbanum. And in these mountains I saw another mountain, and beyond these mountains, I saw another mountain, to the east and the ends of the earth, whereon were aloe trees, and all the trees were full of stacte, being like almond trees. And when one burnt it, it smelled sweeter than any fragrant odor. So let's check out a visual for this. That's why I love having this here. So we can see this here. And again, I mentioned frankincense tears. This is sort of the this concept here. That's just the common way to say it in English, is frankincense tears. So these are hard bits of sap. So the sap comes out and it hardens. If you've ever held frankincense tears and you didn't know what they were, you would think this could be a type of stone. They're very, very, very hard. Amber would also be another type here, where it hardens to the point that it's very difficult to use and very easy to just put it into your pocket, as opposed to maple syrup as a sap, which is just very sticky. So that is what these trees are full of. Okay. So we see all these lovely trees, and when we burn the trees, it's smelling really nice. So that's great, Enoch, but where are we going with this, right? You might be wondering. I thought we were talking about Sheol. I thought we were talking about heaven. Is this a type of heaven? Is this it? you have to wonder too how stinky everything was at this time. Now, we're not talking like medieval Europe stinky. Medieval Europe was very stinky. But this is a place where, Enoch is living at a time where there's animal feces that are, you can find them in the, in the city. Your neighbors and people that are merchants and stuff, it may have been a while since they've had a shower. You're gonna get dung in your sandals, possibly in your toes, and now he's in this area where everything is like beautifully fragrant. So this, to somebody reading this at that time period, I mean, just imagine that. Think about your day throughout the day. Most of the stuff that you are smelling is pretty neutral. Like, if you smell your room right now, does anybody's room have a fragrance that they didn't put there? A good or bad fragrance that they didn't put there? I don't know if you guys want to answer that. And then I'm going to take a sip and then answer the questions while you're doing that. So what does your room smell like right now? For me, nothing. There's no smell. Okay, there's no smell. If maybe I don't smell it. Maybe if somebody had come to visit, they were like, "Oh, it smells like cats or something," but I don't smell anything. Okay. Let's see. There are 2 Along with the Gods movies in Scandinavian Netflix, Korean, so it's probably in Korean Netflix, right? That's the hope. We can definitely check that while we do this. Not YouTube, we want Netflix. Come on, Netflix. Get yourself together. Get yourself together, Netflix. Alright, this is taking too long. Alright. Let's see. I think our rooms smell things where we're just so used to it we can't sense anything. I don't know. My cats, they got their big poopies. And let me tell you, that's not a smell I can ever get used to. Ever. Choco's right here. He's sleeping next to me. Choco. I can never get used to that smell. Ever. It'd be disgusting. That's what I was met with this morning. Just like the smell. Can you imagine? Everywhere you go, that's the smell you smell. So for any of you that have cats or dogs or any other animal that leaves a large, stinky poo-poo, imagine being around that pretty much constantly. And now this guy, Enoch, is writing about this place where everything smells like the most beautifully fragranced, almost a nature tabernacle in a way. Because this type of like frankincense and myrrh, these are the things that you would burn as an incense offering before types of worship, not just in this kind of religious concept, but also like the ancient Egyptian religions as well. So they burned it in like the halls of their worship building or before worshiping, that kind of thing. This was like an offering to the gods. And so now this is going to smell like beautiful nature church almost. It's gotta be amazing. This for some reason was, oh Pow Pow, your comment was hidden, but I made it unhidden. You smell like American. I see. Which, was that to me? I don't know if I smell cheese, pickles, and hamburger pizza, but that's how I think America smells like. And pine trees too. All right, we're going to chapter 32. Oh, there was a question about what these brackets mean. So the brackets, some of this is to clarify it, or parts of it were missing. So this is like what it most likely meant was this. The other thing as well is, of course, with English, some of these words written in another language may include a concept of angelic. but when we write it down in English, it's just a name. So we have to add that this is what the word also encompasses. So this happens a lot of times when we're doing the translation stuff. It's usually in that form. The Book of Enoch, as far as the original text, let's see if we can find these here, right? Very, very, very intact. If we compare this to something like the Gospel of Philip, not as intact. Okay. So for these, I think you need to know a little bit too about the document itself, and then just what it's most likely describing. So this, thankfully, we have a lot of it. Some of the Dead Sea Scrolls we have a lot of as well. But these types of brackets also appear in the Bible, and they're usually a reference to words that needed extra English words to be making sense in this sentence, because in the original Hebrew, for example, that single word had encompassed these ideas into it. So that's part of that as well. It's a good question. It's just a thing that a Korean would say. When I first came to Korea, I think there was like, I can't say Korean people smelled like kimchi. That's not what I mean. But there's an aspect of kimchi. There's a note of smell that is in kimchi. And also, it was on the breath of some Korean people. It wasn't kimchi. It was just like this scent note that I had associated with kimchi, because I never smelled anything similar to it. And then that was also there. But I mean, that makes sense. You know, we smell like what we eat. Eat a lot of garlic, you smell like garlic, you know. I'm extremely sensitive to scents. I don't tend to go become nose blind. Oh, okay. Since the day I moved in, the bathroom smells like urine. My room smells like dirty clothes to me. Close friends have promised me my place smells wonderful. Yeah, I definitely know what you mean. I think it's the migraine summer. I think our migraines make us very prone to those smells. The worst time, I think, is when I have a migraine and I'm rolling around on my bed, wishing for sleep, and then one of the cats lays down a chunky poo-poo and that smell wafts into the bedroom, and I have to get up and I have to clean it. I would love to just not, because I'm in a lot of pain, but I'm dry heaving on the bed, worried I'm gonna vomit, and it's just not a good time, so I have to clean it up. You want to ask wine tasters for the vocabulary to use for scents. Yeah, they tend to be really good with that, at least that I've seen. So we're going to read E first, and then we're going to read G. Okay. These are usually, again, we've seen this before in Enoch. These are slightly different ways to write it down. And after these fragrant odors, as I looked towards the north over the mountain, I saw 7 mountains full of choice nard and fragrant trees like cinnamon and pepper. If you guys don't know what nard is, this is nard. Okay. It is a common smell of a flower that's referred to a few times in the Bible. So that's nard. I know it sounds very funny, but that's what it is. And so similar again in GG. And thence I went over the summits of all of these mountains far towards the east, and passed above the Erythraean Sea, and went far from it, and passed over the angel Zotiel. So it looks like he's flying in some fashion, because he's passing over the tops of these mountains. I don't think he's walking up and down the mountains. And I came to the garden of righteousness, and I saw beyond those trees many large trees growing there, and of godly fragrance, large, very beautiful and glorious. and the tree of wisdom whereof they eat, and know great wisdom. So do we know where we're at now? Do we know where we're at? GG is similar. The only difference is that we've got two of these trees that are the tree of knowledge, whose holy fruit they eat, and know great wisdom. That tree is in height like the fir, and its leaves are like those of the carob tree, and its fruit like the clusters of the vine, very beautiful. And the fragrance of the tree penetrates afar. So a fir tree is one of those really tall pine trees in that evergreen family. If you want to look at the carob tree, just to see how their leaves look, okay. So these are the leaves here, not these pods. So these are the leaves. So it's tall like a fir tree with these types of like deciduous leaves, these flat leaves. And then the clusters of the vines. So actually I have a bunch of grapes right here. So that's what this tree looks like. Could it have been an apple? I guess, but it's very unlikely that it was an apple. Apples, as far as I can remember, originated in Turkey. And so some people thought maybe it's the quince, maybe it's the pomegranate. But it looks like it's none of those based on this, right? So this is the Garden of Eden. Yep. Are we floating over paradise? We're floating over the Garden of Eden. Okay. So they're calling it the Garden of Righteousness, but it's interesting. Now we get a description of this tree. And it's just a really nice, pretty tree. I like the fact that it's this tree, like if you just think about it, just from this description in verse 4, this is a tree you want to touch and eat from. You know, when it's big. First of all, you see it, right? You see it from far away. But the other thing is that for the trees, so we talk about in the geography class, we talk about the coniferous trees and the deciduous trees. And coniferous trees are the trees that are like, I'll show you here. So they are going to be like these leaves here. They're very thin, tight, pokey, and if you eat them, has anybody eaten any pine tree leaves? Every time I ask my students that, they always say, "No, teacher, what are you talking about?" And I'm just like, you never... How are you never a child to go out and just eat things in nature? You know, if you try one of these, they don't taste very good. So that's why I tell the students to remember the coniferous trees look like cones and deciduous leaves are delicious. These are leaves that you would much rather eat, especially most animals that eat tree leaves. They do eat from these leaves. You're also familiar with them if you have ever had like dolmas, which are these stuffed grape leaves. You might know them by a different name. So this is from a leaf. You need the leaf of a grape tree so we can actually see them, or not grapevine, not tree. Grape leaves, do we have a leaf? Here we go. They look like this. And you fill them with rice and different kinds of spices and cook them for like an hour in this lemony water and then eat the whole thing. So this is not something where you take it off. It's not like cooking in a banana leaf. Has anybody cooked in a banana leaf? I don't know if you guys have, but there's a lot of different ways to cook in a banana leaf, like cooking like coconut milk and fish together, or fish and pork together in this banana leaf. You take the banana leaf off and you eat the stuff inside. You don't do that here. You eat everything. And so now we would be familiar then, if we're thinking about living in this time period, these are leaves that I recognize as probably edible, right? I might eat the pine nuts, but I'm not going to eat the pine cone. There's not a lot of really delicious edible stuff that grows from these pointy evergreen coniferous trees in general. The stuff that I want to eat is going to tend to come from this deciduous tree. And now not only am I seeing this tree and I know this probably has fruit that I want to eat. Now I see the fruit grows in clusters. And I think for anybody, when we see like a bunch of grapes together versus a big old apple, and someone says, hey, feel free to snack on something, you might reach for the grapes just because they have these smaller fruits for you to pick. It's just sort of a thing, I think, that people like to do. Of course, I love apples, but if I'm given the choice between if I'm hanging out with people and, hey, there's a bunch of fruits out, feel free to snack on them as we're having a discussion, I'm going to go for the grapes. They're just pick and pop it in your mouth. Very simple. So I feel like this tree, and it smells wonderful, right? It's the most like amazing smelling tree. This tree is just like, not only was it not fair just from the Garden of Eden by itself, just that whole story, just really not fair to Adam and Eve, right? I nicknamed it, even when I was a Christian, I nicknamed it the first sting operation. I just thought this was so cruel to do. Now even more so that we have a description of the tree, how cruel this was, because this is like, everything about it was designed to make you want to eat this tree. And that's just so cruel. We have stuffed leaf here. I don't approve. Then Ratza. Again, how do I delete somebody out of existence? That's an F for the day. If you don't enjoy certain types of foods, that's F for day. Dolmatis, mostly in the Greek restaurants, right? Cabbage dolma. Oh yeah, the stuffed cabbage. I know what you're talking about. These guys, right? Again, this is that big leaf. You want to roll something in it, eat it. These are the leaves we like to eat. These big flat leaves, I feel like this is just not fair. Adam and Eve stood no chance. Just no chance at all. Then I said, how beautiful is this tree? How attractive is its look? And then Raphael, see, I knew we had another one of those angels. Raphael, the holy angel who was with me, answered and said, this is the tree of wisdom, of which thy father, old in years, and thy aged mother, who were before thee, have eaten. And they learnt wisdom, and their eyes were open, and they knew they were naked, and they were driven out of the garden. It's terrible. So we are definitely in the Garden of Eden. This is definitely the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And again, like he knows what this could be. He knew this coming in. Oh, this is a tree of great wisdom, and if you eat, like, he gets this. He knew this coming into it, and still, Enoch says, my goodness, this is a fine tree. This is an amazing tree. Wow. I want to look at this thing and touch it and eat it. Like, that's what he's thinking. And he knows better. He knew what Adam and Eve didn't know. He knows better, and even he is still admiring this amazing tree. How unfair to Adam and Eve that they had this. They just had no chance. I approve of pizza, so I'm automatically an A+ in the US. Pineapple on pizza, though. I hear in Sweden they have banana pizza. Is that a thing? Or is that just the internet lying to me? Enchanted gardens, sacred trees, magic apples, and talking snakes getting my popcorn. Just be careful that your popcorn is not from the corn of the knowledge of good and evil. Somebody already ate of the tree. Damage been done. Might as well take another bite. I know, right? But remember, this is Enoch. He's chosen to witness all these things because he's the most righteous person. So for him to go and do that, the damage has already been done to humanity. But I think if Enoch takes that, he's going to damage his own eternity. I wonder if he sees anybody in this garden, right? We have this chapter and then the next chapter, and then we are done for today. And from thence I went to the ends of the earth, and saw there great beasts, and each differed from the other. And I saw birds also differing in appearance and beauty and voice, the one differing from the other. And to the east of those beasts I saw the ends of the earth, whereon the heaven rests, and the portals of heaven open. And I saw how the stars of heaven come forth, and I counted the portals out of which they proceed, and I wrote down all their outlets of each individual star by itself, according to their number and their names, and their courses and their positions, their times and their months, as Uriel, the holy angel who was with me, showed me. He showed all things to me and wrote them down for me. Also their names he wrote for me, and their laws and their companies. So here we're just looking out into the heavens. Not heaven is like the place where the angels live necessarily. We're talking about like the sky, the cosmos. But look how it's described. I saw the ends of the earth whereupon the heaven rests, and the portals of heaven open. So it appears to me, upon this reading, it appears to me that if we take this Jewish concept of a flat earth with a dome on top of it, there will be these portals opening from outside the dome so that these stars may pass through it. That's what it appears to be. And that this way, that when Uriel's writing this down and Enoch is keeping track of it, he's learning about every star and when you can see it, so that way he knows which months it's associated with, what seasons it's associated with. And of course we care about astronomy. We care about that even as ancient people, because this will help us with planting and seasons, keeping track of years, that sort of thing. So we do really care about astronomy. And this is where Enoch learns about it. Which is interesting, because isn't that what one of the Watchers taught people? And they were punished for that. But now Uriel teaches it to Enoch, and that's okay. Uriel writes it down for him, you know, like, hey boy, you're doing this too slowly. Just writes it down for him. Yeah, kind of interesting. So that'll take a while as well. Obviously, you know, I don't know how many of you live in a very open kind of countryside. But for those of you that have seen just how many stars are in the sky when you're not in a light polluted city, it's like a black tablecloth with just salt spilled all over it. I mean, these are very difficult to count. And so I think here we're supposed to be impressed by the knowledge, like the vast knowledge of the cosmos that Uriel is sharing with us, that every single star has a name, and every single star has a path that it follows, and every single star has certain things that it does, and it goes a certain way, and it appears a certain time. And I think that's what we're supposed to be impressed with here, that as a reader, that's supposed to impress upon us magnitude. So a lot of times when Enoch is talking about how amazing something is, he literally just writes, it's amazing, it's marvelous, it's whatever. But I think that we're supposed to just gather that impression from this. Not only is he trying to write everything down, Uriel has to take his book from him and write it down himself, because there's just so much to write. And I think we're supposed to get that magnitude impression from this. What have you guys written? Ham and pineapple pizza for my son. Never have to ask him what he wants. Me, dead animals. Like, you want a meat pizza? Is that what you're saying? For dead animals? Or just, you don't like pizza, you just like meat? I don't know which one we're going with here. Also, pineapple is Satan. I will take my F. That F for you. We do have banana pizza here, but it's honestly rare. We do, however, have pea pizza, P-E-A pizza. Goodness. I don't know. I don't know if that... It can't be worse than potato pizza. Potato pizza, I don't know. It's okay. It just feels very stodgy. There will be a war, and it will be between those who like pineapple on pizza and those of us who are right. You mean the sacrilegious? Is that what it is? There's a place for you. Where did we find in the book of Enoch that you get to go to if you're not punished while you're here on earth? You're going to be in that nasty waiting room where you get punished for not liking pineapple. Almost as contentious as politics in the U.S., yes. Let's not get us started on the U.S. politics, especially right now. My golly goodness. All right. So here we are with our last chapter think it's the last chapter. Enoch is going to the north. I mean, not the last chapter, the last chapter for today. No, okay. 34, I need 36. All right. And from thence I went to the north, to the ends of the earth, and I saw, a great and glorious device at the ends of the whole earth. And here I saw 3 portals of heaven open in the heaven. Through each of them proceed north winds, and they blow their... And when they blow, there is cold, hail, frost, snow, dew, and rain. I called it, didn't I? I called it. That's it. We're talking about the north winds and the south winds and all of that stuff. In one portal, they blow for good. But when they blow through the other 2 portals, it is with violence and affliction on the earth. And they blow with violence. That's an interesting idea, isn't it? That it's not just the wind, but the portal that the wind comes through. So when we have... I guess snow and rain, and it's for good. It's a nice, snowy, nice light snow that melts into this beautiful river. Or we have this nice rain that's very helpful. But when it blows out of the other 2, we get blizzards, we get biting cold, we get like torrential rains. So it's kind of an interesting concept. And from thence I went towards the west of the earth, and I saw there 3 portals of the heaven, such as I have seen in the east, the same number of portals and the same number of outlets. And from thence I went to the south and to the ends of the earth, and 3 portals of heaven again, and there come dew, rain, and wind. And from thence I went to the east, ends of the heaven. I saw 3 portals, and the 3 small portals above them. Through each of these 3 small portals pass the stars of heaven, and run their course from the west, or to the west, on the path which is shown to them. So we get the different types of portals in the north and south. These are for the winds. And then it appears that the east and west portals are for the stars to pass through. So, didn't we go to where the sun sets, though? So is the sun, in this type of cosmology, is the sun inside the dome? And then the stars are outside of the dome, and then where do they go? Like, if here's our dome, right? And so we have the stars passing through. Do they go around and back, or do they go this way and back? Do they disappear and then reappear? That's kind of an interesting idea. Maybe that's what happened to the other stars that went off course, is they went left instead of right or something, or they went through the western portal to go out of the eastern portal instead of starting in the eastern portal and leaving through the western portal. And as often as I saw, I blessed always the Lord of glory, and I continue to bless the Lord of glory, who has wrought great and glorious wonders to show the greatness of his work to the angels and to spirits and to men, that they might praise his work and all his creation, that they might see the work of his might and praise the great work of his hands and bless him forever. Again, look at the trees, right? That's our take-home message, that just looking at this stuff, we're supposed to recognize how amazing his work is. I would say with Enoch's journey, this is really detailed in how the heavens go, and obviously false, right? The earth is not flat, it doesn't have a dome on it. Rains and snow doesn't necessarily have to come from north winds. There's not 3 holes that let winds in from the cosmos into the planet. And these stars are not so small and close that they pass into the dome of the earth. So that would be really, really close for us. And remember, the Book of Enoch was not... The reason that it appears it's how do I want to phrase this? The Book of Enoch is referenced in the Bible, right? We talked about that. It is referenced in the Bible, and it references other parts of the Bible. So it's referenced in the New Testament. It makes reference to a lot of stuff in the Old Testament. I would say the Book of Enoch should be in the Bible. It is in some Bibles for some sects of Christianity. So I would say that it should be considered part of Christian concepts of how the earth is. If they're taking the Bible, I mean, I don't think there's any other way to interpret this, right? This is not one of those, oh, it's a metaphor, and it's as if there are portals. That's what it's talking about. Um, and Enoch is seeing this. He's physically seeing this. You know, this is not like a vision or a dream that he's having. He is being flown around by Raphael and Uriel, and he is physically seeing this stuff. You know, this is how a lot of people in this older religion, the Jewish religion, they would have perceived the earth. So Enoch, when he's writing this stuff, this is not like a major revelation necessarily. A lot of this is based on the beliefs of that time period. So, you know, for some people saying, well, you know, the Bible doesn't exactly say the earth is flat, and it has a lot of stuff for interpretation. It wasn't. You know, if you read it in the cultural context, it just wasn't. This was not like allegory or anything. This was, yeah, the earth is literally flat. There's literally a dome, and stars literally pass in and out of the dome on their course, and God sets their course. Let's see. Swedes often put fries on pizza. I think Koreans would like that. Hole in the sky means heavy rain. The sky collapsed means father died. I'm sure many cultures use a flat earth covered dome expression. Yeah, the author might have been on hallucinogenic drugs. It could be. You know, it's not outside of, I mean, even today, there's ways to not only use drugs to trigger a quote-unquote spiritual experience. There's people doing that today. But also some things that were encouraged, like fasting, for example, that also makes your brain a little bit looser, if that makes any sense. And that can put you in a state of hallucination, even if you're not on drugs. So, you know, the brain is not... When we hear some people in some fringe science kind of communities or fringe belief communities saying, well, you know, I know what I saw, or I know what I heard, or, you know, I trust my senses. They do a pretty good job of getting us through the earth, you know, getting us through our life, but there are a lot of holes and problems and hiccups with our senses that I think we don't realize. So it's the author could have been on drugs, but quite frankly, it could have just been tired. You know what I mean? You know, I could have just had a long period of studying and then prayed, and in his study-induced tiredness plus pious prayer, he could have just hallucinated this. You know what I mean? It doesn't even have to be drugs. This reads like Kubla Khan by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and Coleridge is definitely on recreational pharmaceuticals. Yeah, I will say this seems a lot less, I don't know, outlandish, scary, clearly hallucinating, compared to like the Book of Revelations. The Book of Revelations is quite a trip. Could this be drug induced? You know, sure. But I would still say a lot of this could be a dream. A lot of this could be just done through really like dedicated meditation, or in this case like prayer, dedicated prayer, to the point that you are sacrificing some of your sleep. You know, you would definitely do that, or sacrificing some of your eating, or dehydrated a bit, because you're so focused on praying. You know, if you devote an entire day to prayer and you don't sleep and you don't eat and you don't drink that day, you'll definitely trigger hallucinations. Absolutely. You know, so that this could have just been caused by that. I would say overall it matches pretty well the beliefs that people had at the time. So I feel like it would be more like one of those hallucinations of a non-drug matter. Usually when we're talking about people that are doing hallucinogenic drugs or psychotropic drugs, things change pretty drastically with your perception. You're seeing through things. I would expect if he was like on psilocybin or something, I would expect we would have been having a lot more colors described to us. I would have expected that we have a lot more seeing through things. Whereas, when Enoch sees under the earth, he has to go to the edge of the earth and look down. Whereas with like a psychotropic, he would just be able to see through the earth, or see through his hand, or see through time. Do you know what I'm saying? So I feel like if we're gonna make a guess, this was probably a dream that he wrote down, or this was probably like a vision induced by dedicated prayer. That's my guess. If I were to guess, given the option, yeah. Ergot, the moldy bread stuff that you guys are talking about with the rye mold. That is fun, but that tends to be a bit more violent, and there's a lot of seizures that can be involved in that. I also think that when he's talking about beasts and stuff, if he's like actually going out and looking at these beasts, they would probably die if he's really seeing them, because when you have that ergot poisoning, some of that does get into like the livestock feed, and then the animals die from that. I'm not sure how common rye was at this time in this part of the earth. I guess we can just check it, where rye naturally grows. Let's see if we got Eastern, Central, and Northern Europe. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. We're too far south for rye. That's what I was thinking. I thought it was a little bit more north. I mean, it does say Northern Europe, but I didn't think it was. I thought it was more north specific, like isolated. But this is, yeah, ergot it tends to be pretty violent, unpleasant. The Salem witch trials, for example, that was very likely ergot poisoning. So the Salem witch trials, as you probably know, in the 1600s, there were some witches in this town of Salem, or this village of Salem. It's a lot smaller than a town, that were accused, or there were people that were accused of witchcraft. They were imprisoned, and then 24 or so were executed. Most of them by hanging, one of them by crushing, but nobody was burned. So the burning of witches was done in Europe. The reason was that the reason they believed there was this witch situation wasn't just, oh, there were 3 girls that accused these people of witches. The children themselves were having these fits. They were having seizures. And the way that some of it was described, even their fathers couldn't hold them down. So imagine that you're this big, strapping, muscular farmer, and your little 10-year-old girl starts screaming about seeing a demonic goat in the hallway, and you're like, there's nothing there, and she starts thrashing on the bed, slamming her head into the top of the wall, and hurting herself, smacking her knuckles and stuff on the walls, on the floor. She's starting to bleed, and so you're just thinking, oh my goodness, I have no idea what's going on. You're saying a bunch of prayers because you think this must be something of Satan, and you're trying to hold her down to stop her from hurting herself, and she's so powerfully fighting you back. You are desperate to try to keep her in place. You are having a hard time holding your 10-year-old daughter still. That's how violent these ergot thrashings, or what's the word I'm looking for? seizures were. On top of this, you go outside tomorrow and you see most of your livestock has died. And you look at your neighbor, and most of your neighbor's livestock has died. They weren't sick. There's no sign that anybody came and like cut them open, that they bled out. They're just dead. And you're just thinking, what is going on? And your daughter, you remember, was screaming about seeing some demonic specter in the doorway, in the hallway. And so you maybe would ask her, sweetheart, yesterday, do you remember what you saw? And she might be feeling a little bit better. She's vomiting a lot, though. She's not feeling good. You really believe she's afflicted, that your family is being cursed. You really would believe that. I mean, that's the only explanation that you can come up with as a man living in the 1600s. That's your basic explanation. And she starts saying, well, we did do this thing with one of the slave workers, Tituba. Okay, so now we know Tituba has caused this, but now when we punish Tituba, this continues. You're still having your daughter hurting herself, covered in bruises and scratches and stuff, thrashing around, screaming until her voice just stops. I mean, this is ergot. Like, this is the ergot poisoning. So I don't think that, aside from the fact that it's just not going to grow there, even if they had it as an import item, I don't think that Enoch would be on ergot hallucinating and then writing down this stuff. This is a violent hallucination. The weird stuff that happens in history that we're just like, that was weird. How did that happen? But it's violent. That's usually blamed for ergot. There was this problem in a town. It actually wasn't too long ago in history. People just decided they could fly and kept jumping out of windows and plummeting to their death. And these were non-suicidal people. Ergot poisoning. So this is what ergot does. These are very violent hallucinations, yeah. All right. I was thinking while I was talking, you guys were writing some stuff down, but I guess you were interested enough in it that you guys had no comments on that. That's fine. We are done right now. We are finished at 11:11. Make a wish. Even though it's only 11:11 here, it's the rest of your times and the rest of your time zones. If you guys have any questions, listening intently. I'm glad because I try to do that, especially with my students, to try to really put them in there, in that time period. So it wasn't just like, oh, this stupid thing that stupid people in stupid history just did and we can shrug it off. Like, we need to understand why it happened so we can figure out a way to not make it happen again. That's okay, Ratsy. You can cry yourself to sleep because you got all those F's today. Or you can do extra credit and, enjoy pineapple pizza like the rest of the civilized world. That's your choice. Okay. All right. I will see you guys later. I think I might actually do a geography live stream after this. So Ratsa, though, go to sleep. Menno, go to sleep. But I think I will do a geography one after this. I'm not 100%. I'll have to see how I feel. But otherwise, thanks for joining us, and I will see you all later. Bye-bye.